Welcome to this week's video where I'll be making the warm glittering cloak. This is an item from the Advent gifting event. You may ask why I'm doing this in January, but this was originally supposed to be my Christmas Day upload, but I couldn't complete it in time, so here we are. Also, thank you for 20k subscribers too. I have a special video coming for that in the upcoming days, but there's still a lot of you who aren't subscribed yet. It's free to do so. If you decide you don't like me being in your subscription box, you can always unsubscribe at any point. Of course, subscribing will allow you to see my future videos, whether the YouTube algorithms pick those videos up or not. But let's get into how I made this thing. So let's take ourselves back to the 22nd of December, which is why there's a Christmas tree in the background, and I was trying to figure out how a cape would work with the fabric I had. So I just started it off by just pinning the fabric to the mannequin to figure out how much I'd need to cut off of the bottom. Once I was happy with how the top part was pinned, I moved to figuring out how much I wanted off of the bottom. The fabric that I'm measuring here I will use for the very top part of the cape. Anytime I have any kind of thing on the floor, my cat always comes to investigate it, so here's your cat footage. I used a pin to mark where I wanted to cut the fabric, and then I just unpinned it from the mannequin so I could get to work on cutting the fabric in a semicircle. I turned it to a much more spacious angle before trying to use the tree skirt as a template, except it just covered all of the fabric in glitter, so despite the tree skirt not being the correct size, I didn't want to feel defeated at the fact that I just threw glitter all over the fabric for nothing, so I tried to make it work. As you can see here, I'm trying. After I attempted to get some kind of half circle shape from the tree skirt, I just decided to fold it in half, just so I could just cut one side and hopefully the other side would turn out the same. And then, of course, I just cut it out. I quickly checked the shape of it and I decided that it looked pretty good. So what I did was I laid out some lining and pretty much just used the bit that I had already cut out as a template to cut out pretty much the same shape with the lining. So I just folded and cat. I just folded the two fabrics together and then, of course, cut it out at the same shape. And here is some footage of me doing that. After both of them were laid down on the floor, I started pleating my lace and pinning it to just the top layer. Pinning ruffled lace is such a long process. I pretty much just moved to my chair and this, I think, took me a couple of hours just to pin in place. It took so long. After the painful process of folding and pinning, I, of course, sewed it down to the fabric. Then came the painful process of attaching the lining to the top piece. I had the good sides facing each other, and I went around all the edges and tucked the lace in and pinned the two bits of fabric together, which was also a very boring and frustrating process. Then it was back to the sewing machine. Now you can't see it, but I am using black thread right now. I'm trying to sew right next to the white stitching, which is what is holding the lace to the fabric, so I'm just stitching on the outside of that. Once it was out of the sewing machine, I turned it inside out and pinned it back to the mannequin to see how things were looking. After I decided that the cape was completely fine, I hand sewed the top of it to gather up the fabric at the top, and then I added bias tape to, you know, the bits where the fabric was being held up the most by pins. So I added some strips to both the front pieces, and then I added some at the back as well. This is no like elite cape making technique, this is simply me just like not really wanting a ton of fabric on my shoulders, because of course there's still the little top bit of cape. Then I slapped it under the sewing machine. With the main part of the cape pretty much done, it was time to make the top bit that rests on my shoulders, so I folded a bit of fabric and folded it a second time, and then I just got an unfinished wheel I had and just used that as a template to get a good circle shape. Then I cut it out, and I also cut a little hole at the top of the fabric, or at the corner of the fabric even. I cut the same shape out of the lining fabric as well. And then I folded them together and cut down one of the sides, so I'd have an opening to the front part of the cape. And copying the steps from the last piece of the cape, I took the top bit of the cape and started pinning the lace down to it. It took me 30 minutes to do that. And I smacked it under the sewing machine. After that was done, I did the same thing that I did with the other bit of cape and just started pinning the lining to the other bit, whilst also making sure I wasn't catching the lace in the seam. Now when it came to actually sewing this, I started off by hemming the separate bits of fabric that were at the top of the openings. This was because I was going to add a cord like through the neck part, so there was going to be an opening on each side of the bits of fabric that were supposed to come together. So I hemmed them separately, and then I started to just sew around the entire bit that I'd pinned, but I left the very top circle open. Now came the part to attach the pieces together, so I turned the bit that I had just sewed inside out, so it was the right way around, and I pinned it to the mannequin. If you remember from earlier in the video, I attached some bias tape to the top of the bottom piece of cape, and basically what I'm doing is I'm folding the bias tape down into the open seam of the top cape, so that when I sew, or like when I hem the top bit of the cape, it will trap the bias tape in there and the two pieces are now attached. Now I don't have footage of the sewing machine, so the next thing, or at least the last thing to do, was make the cord, and on the end of the cord it has pom-poms, so I'm just making a pom-pom. Now, if you have no idea how to make a pom-pom, then what you do is you just wrap a ton of wool around your fingers and then just slot a bit of wool in between that and tie it together, like that. And once that's all secure, you can just start snipping all the loops. Make sure to not get the one that ties the wool together though. Once there are no loops, you can start brushing it all out, but be careful to not pull any of the wool out. That is why I'm holding it at the middle where it's all tied together. And of course, the last step to making a pom-pom is just trimming it down and giving it that nice round pom-pom shape. Now for the cord. So this was like a really weird thing that I learnt in high school like 5 years ago or something, but this is how I make a cord. You basically loop one end on a door handle and then twist it, and you basically just twist it until it wants to like twist into itself. And yeah, I don't know. As you can see, I'm checking if it wants to kind of fold in every time I let it just drop like that. After a ton of twisting, I finally let it kind of fold in on itself, and as you can see here, I'm kind of trying to straighten it out, and there you go, cord, and I cut the top bit, and I now have cord. So I just tie the end bit so it doesn't unravel. To attach the pom-pom to the cord, I basically just hand sewed them together. I found the bit of wool that was holding the pom-pom together, and I just started sewing them together. Before I sewed the other pom-pom on, I threaded it through the cape, and then I sewed the other pom-pom on pretty much the same way I did the first one. And after a few small adjustments around the top, the cape was finished, and I really love how the cape turned out. I know I say that for pretty much everything, but this was my first time making a cape, and it just didn't fail, so... And here was my first time fully trying it on, and I loved every second of it. It's like, even after I swish it around, just look how perfectly it just falls after I've pretty much thrown it up in the air. It just goes back on the floor perfectly. And I don't understand how I've managed to do that. So yeah, there's a lot of me just running around in the garden with it, because of course I'm trying to achieve the flowing kind of look that the in-game cape has, but it's not really working because there's no wind whatsoever. I attempted to do a kind of runway thing. I decided that spin wasn't good enough, so I did another one. And cape lands perfectly, wow. Now, I'm pretty sure here I'm recording for my phone, because I seem to be facing a certain angle. But yeah, I just wanted to get some footage of how the cape looks when I'm just walking casually, but I just continued holding it, and I whipped up a leaf in the process of spinning, so... and then I was really happy. Let me know what you thought of my first cape. I do have a Roblox group. Twitter is where I'm most active. I also have 2 Instagram accounts, one is for cosplay, one is for art. I do plan to implement some more art content in the future, so stay tuned for that. And I do have a TikTok as well. Thank you to the people who watch all the way through my videos, and see you next time.